This man went from Emmy-winning icon to the butt of late-night jokes. For 6 years, he battled cancer in secret, and through it all, he never stopped making art. Who was he? Paul Reubens, the brilliant, misunderstood mind behind Pee-wee Herman. If you grew up in the 80s or 90s, you knew Pee-wee. He wasn't just a phenomenon. He was the spark that made the weird feel welcome, the strange feel cool. But behind the bow tie and the laugh was a man who lived a double life. A creative genius in public, a wounded artist in private. This is the story of artistic rebellion, childhood wonder, public shame, and hard-earned redemption. It's the kind of story you don't hear often in Hollywood, and one you'll never forget. From Groundlings to global icon, Pee-wee wasn't just a character, he was a whole person, with a history, a worldview. I built him like a novelist would build a protagonist. Paul Reubens. In the mid-'70s, Paul joined the Groundlings, LA's hottest improv troupe. It was a boot camp for comedy rebels, a proving ground for names like Will Ferrell, Lisa Kudrow, and Kristen Wiig. Paul was known for his meticulous preparation and obsession with character detail. One night, during a character development class, he stumbled onto an awkward, overeager man-child with a tiny suit, childlike speech, and a spastic laugh. His name? Pee-wee Herman. At first, it was just a sketch, but audience reactions were immediate. People couldn't stop talking about the character. Paul didn't treat Pee-wee as a gag. He wrote a complete backstory. Pee-wee grew up in a candy-colored suburb, went to clown school, and loved fruit salad. He even created a mock driver's license and social security number for him. That level of world-building turned Pee-wee from a character into a universe. In 1981, HBO aired the Pee-wee Herman Show, filmed at the Roxy in Los Angeles. The stage show sold out every night and included a cast of puppet characters, talking chairs, and surreal musical numbers. Pee-wee spoke to adults in a child's voice but carried a wink of irony. Then came the game changer, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, 1985. Directed by a young Tim Burton, it followed Pee-wee's cross-country trip to recover his stolen bicycle. The film mixed absurdist humor with fairy tale logic and Tim Burton's gothic flair. The breakfast machine, the large Marge scene, and Pee-wee's tequila dance became instant classics. Critics didn't know what to make of it. Audiences adored it. The film grossed over $40 million and launched both of their careers. In many ways, Pee-wee predicted the wave of quirky, offbeat heroes that would dominate 90s indie film. And Paul Reubens, the man behind the madness, was suddenly one of the most recognizable faces in America. Pee-wee's Playhouse, controlled chaos. CBS executives wanted Pee-wee to anchor their Saturday morning programming, but Paul wanted control. Total control. He negotiated an unheard-of deal. Full creative authority, production oversight, and the right to make something totally unfiltered. What he delivered was Pee-wee's Playhouse, not just a kids' show, but a psychedelic avant-garde performance art piece disguised as Saturday morning fun. The show debuted in 1986 and instantly confused television critics. It combined puppetry, claymation, absurdist humor, and left-field moral lessons. The set was a visual explosion. Talking furniture, secret passageways, walls that changed color mid-episode. It felt like stepping into the mind of a creative savant, fueled by imagination and sugar. Paul built a cast as eclectic as the set. Cowboy Curtis, played by a pre-Matrix Lawrence Fishburne, was one of TV's rare black cowboys. Miss Yvonne was a glam icon who never apologized for her fabulousness. Characters like Randy, a mischievous puppet, gave voice to the naughty ID that other shows tried to suppress. Even minor side characters had personality arcs, and Paul didn't just star, he oversaw every detail. Writers, set designers, and musicians were encouraged to break norms. One storyboard artist recalled Paul demanding weirder, wilder, more joyful ideas. Themes included emotional intelligence, racial inclusion, self-expression, and even recycling, years before these were common TV topics. But more than that, it won over a generation of kids who didn't feel like they fit in elsewhere. For them, Pee-wee's Playhouse wasn't just entertainment. It was a refuge, a place where their quirks were not only accepted, but celebrated. Despite its popularity, Paul stayed fiercely committed to character. He appeared on Late Night, with David Letterman entirely in costume, refusing to answer questions as Paul Reubens. It was performance art on a national stage, funny, baffling, and completely original. But the pressure was immense. He wasn't just producing a hit show, he was upholding a surreal, immersive universe that demanded constant innovation. Pee-wee wasn't a role he played. He became him. The scandal that broke the spell. July 26, 1991. Paul Reubens was arrested in an adult movie theater in Sarasota, Florida. The charge? Misdemeanor indecent exposure, legally minor, publicly catastrophic. The media pounced. His mugshot, wide-eyed and unshaven, was plastered across headlines. Late-night hosts like Leno and Letterman turned him into a punchline overnight. Within days, retailers yanked Pee-wee dolls off shelves. CBS scrubbed reruns of Playhouse, without warning. The narrative was set. America's quirky children's entertainer had fallen from grace. But behind the scandal was nuance no one cared to hear. Paul hadn't been charged with anything violent or exploitative. There were no victims, just bad optics. Still, in a pre-social media world where TV personalities were expected to maintain a spotless image, the damage was swift and merciless. Paul chose silence. He didn't issue statements or go on apology tours. He quietly stepped out of public life, and that silence created a vacuum, one that critics filled with speculation and judgment. What many didn't know was that Paul had been under intense scrutiny even before the arrest. Just months prior, he'd given a rare interview where he admitted the pressure of being Pee-wee 24/7 was becoming unbearable. He said he longed to take a break, to just be Paul for a while. But Hollywood had typecast him, not as an actor but as a symbol of innocence. When that illusion cracked, so did his career. Years later, when asked about the incident, Paul simply said, "I wish people had waited to hear my story. But I also understand why they didn't." To fans, the incident was heartbreaking not because of what Paul had done, but because of how quickly the world turned on someone who had brought them joy. It wasn't just the end of Pee-wee's Playhouse. It felt like the end of an era, the Chameleon Years. For most of the 90s, Paul retreated from the spotlight, but he never stopped working. He returned to film with a small but symbolic role in Batman Returns, 1992, playing the Penguin's aristocratic father. Then came a string of eclectic performances, a flatulent superhero in Mystery Men, 1999, and a dramatic turn as a flamboyant drug dealer in Blow, 2001, a performance that reminded Hollywood he was more than just a comedian. Television welcomed him back, too. He popped up on shows like Reno 911, 30 Rock, and Pushing Daisies, often in bizarre roles that proved he could still surprise. Behind the scenes, Paul kept writing. He had 2 Pee-wee scripts, one edgy, one family-friendly, but studios were hesitant. Still, he kept creating, kept mentoring, quietly showing up for young comedians and helping them find their voice. In 2007, he re-emerged for a tribute to Playhouse at the Paley Center. When asked if Pee-wee would ever return, he smiled. "I never put the suit away." The Broadway triumph and big holiday. Paul was fearless. He never compromised the weirdness, never softened the edge. That's what made Pee-wee timeless. Judd Apatow. In 2010, after almost 2 decades, Paul returned to the spotlight with the Pee-wee Herman show on Broadway. This wasn't just a nostalgic revival. It was a carefully re-engineered production, blending classic elements with new material, designed to honor the past and embrace a new generation of fans. Audiences wept. They brought their kids, now old enough to appreciate what their parents had grown up with. The reviews were glowing. The New York Times praised Reubens for recapturing the surreal spark of his early days while deepening the emotional resonance. For many, it wasn't just a show, it was a homecoming. Paul used this resurgence to test the waters. He reconnected with old collaborators, including Judd Apatow, who helped produce the next phase, Pee-wee's Big Holiday, 2016. Premiering on Netflix, the movie followed Pee-wee on a road trip of rediscovery, complete with quirky towns, oddball friendships, and a surprise bromance with actor Joe Manganiello that quickly became a fan favorite. Critics praised the film's heart and restraint. It didn't try to modernize Pee-wee with cynicism or grit. Instead, it leaned into timelessness. The idea that childlike wonder and offbeat humor still had a place in the modern world. Paul had bet that nostalgia mixed with sincerity could still captivate. And he was right. What made the comeback so profound wasn't just the applause. It was the redemption arc. Pee-wee was back, not as a punchline, but as a legend. And Paul Reubens proved that creative integrity, patience, and persistence could outlast even the harshest of headlines. Paul's private fight and final message. From 2017 onward, Paul was fighting a private war with cancer. Even as he underwent treatment, he remained creatively active. He was finishing his memoir, revising a new Pee-wee script, and working on an animated reboot for kids who'd never seen the original Playhouse. He also kept a meticulously organized storage of Pee-wee props, puppets, and costumes, as if preparing for one last big adventure. He continued making appearances when he could, always upbeat, always sharp. Friends recall that he never once mentioned his illness in casual conversation. He didn't want people to treat him differently, said one close collaborator. He wanted to leave people with joy, not worry. On July 30th, 2023, the world woke up to news of his passing. Few outside his inner circle even knew he was ill. His final message, written in advance and released posthumously, read, "Please accept my apology for not going public with what I've been facing the last 6 years. I have always felt a huge amount of love and respect from my friends, fans, and supporters. I have loved you all so much and enjoyed making art for you." The statement rippled across the internet. Tributes poured in. Fans shared their favorite episodes, dance scenes, and quotes. Celebrities posted stories of Paul's kindness and his belief in the power of staying true to your weirdest, most joyful self. And just like that, Paul Reubens, who had always hidden behind the mask of Pee-wee, finally stepped forward, unmasked as the deeply human artist behind the laughter. Legacy of a misfit genius. He created a world where it was okay to be weird, and that world saved a lot of us. Fan tribute on social media. Paul Reubens didn't hide behind Pee-wee Herman. He built him from the inside out, a reflection of his deepest values, defiance, curiosity, and joy. His influence can still be felt everywhere. Tim Burton's cinematic surrealism, seeded in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the off-kilter absurdity of shows like Adventure Time or Bluey, Paul paved the way. Lawrence Fishburne credits him with giving his career its first major platform. Judd Apatow called him fearless, and Conan O'Brien once said, "Paul Reubens was one of the most innovative comedic voices of our time." Even now, kids who never saw Pee-wee live still quote his catchphrases. His laugh, that unforgettable heh heh, is instantly recognizable. And behind it all was an artist who made people feel seen, strange, and safe. In an era obsessed with branding, Paul rejected the spotlight when it didn't feel right. He protected his characters like a parent guard their child. And when the world turned on him, he didn't retaliate. He rebuilt. Pee-wee Herman wasn't a performance. It was a world view. Be curious, be loud, be unapologetically weird. And above all, be yourself. What did Pee-wee Herman mean to you? Share your story below. Subscribe. And stay tuned for more stories of misfits who changed the world by staying true to themselves.